You're in the middle of
a stream of traffic moving out of the Florida Keys today as concern grows that Hurricane George will affect the chain of islands. George has left massive destruction in the Caribbean already, so South Floridians are not taking any chances. Hello, I'm Dave Schwartz, and welcome to this edition of Weather Center.
And I'm Jeff Morrow. The big hurricane battered Puerto Rico last night and early this morning, and today the Dominican Republic took a direct hit. We're working on the story in the Forecast Center, where Warren Madden has the latest.
Last night we were dealing with a terrible night across Puerto Rico as Hurricane George traversed the island from east to west. And tonight it is the island of Hispaniola, which includes the nations of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, that are facing the brunt of Hurricane George's wrath. Let's get the latest information now from the National Hurricane Center. As of 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the center of George at 18.9 north, 71.3 west. That's about 745 miles southeast of Miami, or about 70 miles east-northeast of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Top wind speeds have dropped. The center of the storm moving over mountains that are over 10,000 feet high. Top winds now at 95 miles an hour. Still moving to the west-northwest at 14 miles an hour, and the central pressure has come up a bit, now at 985 millibars. Hurricane warnings are still in effect for the entire island of Hispaniola, which includes the Dominican Republic here to the east and Haiti to the west, the southeastern Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands, and also into eastern Cuba. Hurricane watch is up for central Cuba and the central Bahamas, and the National Hurricane Center has said on its latest advisory that it may have to put out watches for the northern Bahamas and into southeastern Florida sometime during the night tonight or into the day on Wednesday. Okay, as we come back here, we are joined now by our hurricane expert, John Hope. And John, we've been seeing the system develop, and now it's weakened a little bit, but it may continue to affect both Hispaniola and then heading on up in towards southeast Florida over the next couple of days.
Well, it certainly is going to affect Hispaniola with very heavy rain, very similar, I think, to the rain that they got in Puerto Rico last night. Even though the system is weakened, the rain is still there and it's still very, very heavy. But having said that, the system is weaker by a significant amount. Actually, it's down now to 95 miles an hour, and the pressure down to 985 millibars. And we believe that it's going to weaken further before it finally gets back out over the water, perhaps tomorrow morning.
Well, certainly residents of southeast Florida are taking the potential threat from Hurricane George seriously. And joining us now by phone is Bill Massey. He is the FEMA Regional Hurricane Program Manager, joining us from the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables. And Mr. Massey, was wondering, 7 years ago we dealt with Hurricane Andrew, of course, and how are the lessons that FEMA learned from Hurricane Andrew being applied toward the preparations for perhaps the approach of Hurricane George?
FEMA's taken a very proactive approach to these hurricanes these days. We actually have a liaison team here located at the National Hurricane Center to provide information to state, local, and federal agencies in responding to this hurricane before it actually makes landfall. We've got a group of people here that are briefing the states and the director of FEMA 3 or 4 times a day, and just providing information so that we will be ready to respond to this thing, and we'll be ready to have resources available in the right locations.
Do we have any information on how the evacuations are progressing in terms of the voluntary evacuation of non-residents and visitors to the Keys?
I'm with Billy Wagner here, and you all know him from Monroe County. And Billy has told me today that the response to his voluntary evacuation request has been going very well. I think people down here take these things seriously. That's one situation that we don't have down in the South Dade area, that people take these things on a lackadaisical basis. We do have a problem in other parts of the country, and as John Hope well knows, that when they haven't had recent hurricane experience, they seem to forget. But right now, there's a run on the grocery stores, and we do see a lot of people coming out of the Keys.
Bill, this is John Hope. This system seems to have weakened quite a bit, and looking at satellite pictures, it seems to be weakening still. What do you think will your problems be tomorrow morning if we wake up and find out that it's, say, a weak Category 1 by that time?
Of course, we expect it to weaken as it goes over the islands. The concern, John, is, as you well know, is that it may come off the island and get in the warm water and intensify again. We do anticipate that it's going to be a weak weak system in the morning. But we don't want people to let their guard down, because the system does have the ability to intensify, and the possibilities are certainly there. So we're trying to keep the awareness level up.
And that's what we're trying to emphasize as well, Bill.
John, as you know, there's several storms. David was one that came across the islands and was knocked down by the high mountain ranges and really didn't come back up. And when David came on up to Savannah in 1979, people said, well, this is what a hurricane's all about. We don't have to worry about it anymore. But, you know, we cannot just let our guard down. And thanks to you guys at the Weather Channel, hopefully people aren't going to do that.
Okay, well, Bill Massey, thanks for joining us, the FEMA Regional Hurricane Program Manager, joining us from the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida. John, wanted to take a look at our satellite picture here and show the viewers what the exact situation is over Hispaniola at the present time. We have seen the storm become more disorganized, but still causing a lot of problems on the island.
Well, still a whole lot of rain there, certainly, Warren, and also on the south coast, particularly here, we have a strong onshore flow. We know that makes the storm surge high. And now this weather is spread all over the Haiti as well as the Dominican Republic, so heavy rain is going to continue overnight, very much as they experienced last night in Puerto Rico.
Okay, well, John, thanks very much for joining us. We'll be getting back with you over the next couple of hours. If you have to be away from your TV and you would like to keep track of what is happening with Hurricane George, it continues its progress across the island of Hispaniola and could potentially affect the southeastern U.S. over the next several days, check out our website. Point your web browser to weather.com for all the latest information and advisories, and weather from around the world to boot. Let's go back to the studio now and find out what's happening tonight in the United States.
Well, thanks a lot, Warren. We have some tropical weather here in the U.S. It's all to the south of this line. That's the leading edge of some cool polar air, that dry air. This morning, Tower, Minnesota, 17 degrees. How's that for cool polar air? Well, the leading edge of that is it's through Nashville now, heading toward Atlanta, Georgia, through New York City. Skies will clear up later on tonight. Tomorrow looks just great. But to the south of the front, that's where the dew point temperatures are in the 70s, and it still feels very summer-like. And, well, when it's warm and it's humid and there's a sea breeze nearby, well, folks in Miami quite often see this. Drenching rainstorms, and that's just what we had in the Miami metropolitan area. The rain coming down, straight down from the clouds. The rain helped cool it off just a little bit. Temperature went from 90.
Hurricane George has weakened some in the last few hours. Let's turn now to Warren Madden, who's monitoring the situation from our forecast center.
Thank you very much, Jeff. We have indeed seen a weakening of the top winds of Hurricane George over the last several hours as it batters itself against the mountains of Hispaniola, in some cases over 10,000-foot high mountains. But just because the top winds have weakened does not mean that the storm is any less dangerous. Let's look at the latest information. This is the new advisory out from the National Hurricane Center. Notice the top winds now down to 80 miles an hour. The location of the system, the center placed 705 miles southeast of Miami, which is about 45 miles north-northeast of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Estimated pressure again coming up just slightly from the last advisory, up to 986 millibars, and the system still moving to the west-northwest at about 14 miles an hour. Our watches and warnings have not changed since our last advisory from the National Hurricane Center. The warnings exist from eastern Cuba, southeastern Bahama Islands, the Turks and Caicos Islands, and across the entire island of Hispaniola, which encompasses the Dominican Republic on the east and Haiti on the west. And then as we head farther to the north and west, hurricane watches in effect for central Cuba and into the central Bahamas, which means you could see hurricane conditions within the next 24 to 36 hours. Further up the coast and further to the north and west, in the Florida Keys, evacuations are already underway. Since there's only one road leading from the Keys to the mainland, emergency officials have asked that all non-residents and visitors leave immediately. Meanwhile, residents are preparing, boarding up their homes, and many are planning on leaving as the hurricane gets closer. And to give us some more information on the evacuation of the Keys, joining us now is Mr. Billy Wagner, joining us from the Florida Monroe County Emergency Management Center. Let us check in with Mr. Wagner, and what we're looking at here is we're getting into the later part of the night. Is the traffic still flowing well? Are the roads still crowded coming up out of the Keys along, say, Route 1?
Well, right now they're monitoring it real close. We have a steady flow. The evacuation process is going very well. We're phasing it in. The traffic has subsided some, but we know that it'll rapidly pick up in the morning. Specifically, if they should put up hurricane watch for the area. But in the event they don't, we still go on ahead with phased evacuation, and we'll probably have a mandatory evacuation of the Key West area and the Lower Keys early in the morning. We have also going to start the evacuation of our special needs population, of which we have about 800 that we have to transport anywhere from 100 to 150 miles all the way up to our shelter at Florida International University.
Is there a possibility that do we have enough time to get the evacuation accomplished? How long does it take to get get all this evacuation activity taken care of from the time we start it?
Well, we're phasing it in, so we're looking at a time frame of about 36 hours, and it's on schedule, and if everything goes well and everybody pays attention, and when we give the order, they go on and implement their plans, we won't have any problem. One thing we want everybody to do is drive very, very carefully when they head to the mainland.
Excellent advice, since a traffic accident on that single road out could certainly cause some problems. Mr. Billy Wagner, thanks for joining us this evening as we continue to monitor the progress of Hurricane George and its possible effect on the Florida Keys and the Florida mainland. Joining me now here in the Forecast Center is Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. Stu, we just got the latest advisory in from the National Hurricane Center. What's your take on what has happened over the last few hours?
Well, it's pretty much status quo. First of all, what's occurred over the past 6 to 12 hours with the hurricane is pretty much what was expected in terms of its track, and also the weakening which has occurred while it's been over land. It's been a little tough to find the exact center of circulation once the eye disappeared. We do think we have a pretty good read on it, but just given some uncertainty there, and given the way the steering players are all coming together, the Hurricane Center's official track really has not changed a whole lot since the last advisory.
As we take a look at the satellite picture, you can see that the circulation here still very evident, and the outflow still looks pretty good, but again, as you mentioned, it's rather hard to pick out the exact center of circulation. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft of the Air Force Reserve can't go into the storm until the center emerges back out over the water, and once that happens, we'll have a better fix.
We will, although actually on this latest shot right here, this little bright spot, which is a warmer spot in the clouds, is not too terribly far away from where we think the circulation center is, which is just crossing into Haiti. What does concern us in the long run is the fact that one of the things that we would look for in a well-organized hurricane, which is this high-level outflow, is still very apparent, and the Hurricane Hunter plane has found still a very well-put-together low to mid-level circulation in the hurricane. So once that center gets out over water, the potential still exists for it to intensify.
And speaking of it getting back out over water, we're concerned with what's going to happen next, and we thought we'd take a little bit of a broader view here to see what might be influencing the path of the storm as we go on through the next couple of days.
Well, we talked about the steering players a couple minutes ago, if you will. There is a ridge of high pressure aloft to the north of the hurricane. Then if we look closely here, we see a circulation aloft, low pressure, winds blow counterclockwise around highs in the northern hemisphere, or I'm sorry, clockwise, counterclockwise around lows. So there is this path, this track for it to go on. The question is, how strong will both of these players be? Where will their exact position be? And that's why we have that margin of error in the track as it heads toward Florida, why folks need to keep up with the latest.
Okay, well, Stu, thanks very much for joining us as we go on through the night, filling you in on the details here of Hurricane George. The hurricane continues to pound the island of Hispaniola and could affect the southeastern U.S. in several days. Hurricane watches may be issued as early as the morning into southeastern Florida. If you have to be away from your television set, you do have another option for getting information about this hurricane or any other weather information. That's our website at weather.com. Let's head back now into the studio. Jeff Morrow will fill us in on what's happening around the United States.
All right, Warren, and indeed things are fairly tranquil compared to what's going on in the Caribbean. We have a cold front which is slipping through the northeast, some rain now just about ready to move offshore of Maine. Some leftover showers back behind the system here, behind the cold front. In western New York and parts of northwest PA. Sprinkles and showers, really. Some of the heaviest rain had been along the Gulf Coast, but a lot of that action has kind of died off. Some big thunderstorms that earlier developed here in South Texas have crossed the Rio Grande into Mexico. And we even have a few showers with a weak system in northern California, but weak is the operative word there. A quick look at our current weather map shows this cold front, and it is a sharp one with a cool dome of high pressure coming in behind it, lining up from about Cape Cod all the way down to Nashville and then down into Texas. Had a record high today in Dallas, but that's going to go by the boards as this high builds on in. There's some of the rain moving east, still raining up at Bangor, Maine, and on over toward Bar Harbor.
Hurricane George raked Puerto Rico last night. Tonight in San Juan, it's clear, 79 degrees. The wind is calm. But out to the east, hurricane force winds and heavy rain are raking the island that includes Haiti and the Dominican Republic. This is Storm Watch. We begin with our tropical update featuring Hurricane George. These, the latest data from the National Hurricane Center, showing you the location of the center of the eye, or at least where it is estimated that the center of the eye is. It is over land, and the hurricane hunters do not fly in over land, certainly in over another country. And also there are no radars to which we have access, so we don't know exactly where the center is, but it really doesn't matter. It's going to re-emerge out over the warm waters, and we'll get a look at an eye here, I think, toward morning. 80-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds. That's as weak as this thing has been for several days. And by the way, this track that you see that takes us from the African coast all the way to the Dominican Republic indicates the track this has taken since it became a tropical storm, and that was 6 days ago. So we have lived with Hurricane George for the better part of a week. Continues to move west-northwest at 14 miles per hour. So that would put some countries downstream in the path of the hurricane, which means the Turks and the Caicos, the lower Bahamas, the central Bahamas, a hurricane watch is in effect, central Cuba, hurricane watch, and southeastern Cuba, a hurricane warning. Here's our hurricane right now. It's really been ripped apart as it's moved across the Dominican Republic here today. The mountains in here exceed 10,000 feet in elevation, so with that kind of friction involved, it really can rip up the circulation to a hurricane. That's why this has weakened. Nevertheless, there are just tremendous rains occurring here in the Dominican Republic. With the center somewhere in here, the flow is onshore, rising from sea level to 10,000 feet. And many of us know what happens when air is forced up 2 miles. Even if there's no hurricane, but in this case there is, with copious tropical moisture, 10 to 20 inches of rain, probably less rain here in Haiti. And here are just the high thin clouds over San Juan with just our light winds. In Puerto Rico there is a heavy surf advisory for the southern beaches, obviously. On the south side we still have some high surf, and certainly that's the case here too. The center should re-emerge out here, and then the forecast track takes it on a more northwest track, which would put it closer to the United States. So those of us who live in Florida need to keep particular attention to this, and there may be some hurricane watches for the upper Bahamas here too later on tonight and tomorrow. So there we have it. Anywhere within that cone, a horn-shaped, is where this hurricane could eventually go. Once it emerges out over the water, we anticipate strengthening once again beginning tomorrow. If you live in the Bahamas, if you live in Florida, take a tip from the American Red Cross and the Weather Channel. When putting together your disaster plan, develop that evacuation plan right now with various routes, and make sure you have your supply kit with all of these elements in one place. So that's it. And that's not all that there is going on here in the tropics. There's a tropical storm Ivan that's moving north, and another hurricane has formed where Tropical Storm George did 6 days ago. More on the hurricane after this.
It's still a waiting game, but some people on the Florida Keys are taking no chances. The latest on Hurricane George, plus your weather on Weather Center after your local forecast.
You know, ever since we started telling players that oversized is overrated, tour players kept coming up to me all the time and saying, "Come on, Raj, is it really that good?" All I know is this: no club gets to be #1 on any pro tour without paying the players unless it's head and shoulders better than anything else they've ever used. You know, the Tri-Metal's so good, it's changing the opinions of even the toughest critics in the game.
People who know me, I don't get too excited about anything. And I don't endorse anything I don't use or believe in. I use Tri-Metal, and I believe in Tri-Metal.
I'm telling you, this club's for real. This is the direction golf is headed. And it's so hot the golf pros can't even keep it in stock. Oversized is over. The Tri-Metal is the right size club.
Call now to receive your free video on the Tri-Metal. We'll also rush you a free subscription to Great Golf Magazine, the insider's guide to new technology and in-depth interviews from the world of golf. Call the number on your screen now for your complimentary subscription and free video.